Hello again from AM Builds. This time we have a short video of a wee tool which I've made for my Festool Rail Saw, which I am calling the Poor Man's Narrow Rip Guide. Joking aside, I came up with the idea as I have multiple identical plywood rips to do for the drawers in my new shop, and one of the few frustrations of the rail saw system is that when making multiple, especially small cuts, there is no economy of time for each extra cut, and it can be difficult to get all of them the same size without some sort of jig or guide. This task is of course easy if you have a rip fence on a table saw. Until recently I spend lots of my working time in the operating theatre, and having fewer than the regular amount of digits was simply not an option. We don't have saw stop saws here in the UK, although Festool are just launching their TKS80 with the saw stop technology built in, so now there will be an option to be much safer, albeit a pricey one for the hobbyist. So at present, for those without a table saw or those out on site with only a rail saw with them, here is a way of cutting identical multiple strips of wood. It's 3D printed, and I printed it in PETG, which is a robust waterproof plastic similar to the stuff from which they make fizzy drink bottles. It's printed on its end so the maximum strength is within the layers and supports the hinge. I'm new to 3D printing and have what I think is an excellent starter printer, the Prusa Mini, and would commend it to you if you are new to 3D printing or need an additional workhorse. I've printed about 1500 hours since getting it 4 months ago. I'm also new to 3D design, and so I'm playing with Tinkercad, and should any one of you want to see the design and see if it works for you, you can find it here and in the description. You may have to fiddle with the hinge gaps a little on your printer and with your choice of filament to get the hinge action correct. I started with it horizontally for the iterations towards the final shape, and on turning it upright the hinge was then too tight. I ran the print at 100% density in Prusa's own filament, with a raft and full support to maximise the structural and sizing integrity. A few minutes with some needle nose pliers and a sharp chisel had it cleaned up, and I cleaned out the smaller holes with a 4mm drill and the main 5mm hinge holes with an imperial drill just bigger than 5mm. I chose 5mm brass rod for the hinge pin, partly because it tends to have a self-lubricating action, but also because it can be easily cut on a regular mitre saw. Just take your time and the cut will be fine, as you see here. Probably a good idea to stand up. I used a cone drill to tidy up the ends of the brass rod, partly so there was no sharp edges that might catch a finger, but also to facilitate the insertion of the rod in the plastic parts. As you'll see, a few taps with the hammer seats it home. Here's a demonstration of the system in real time using 18mm plywood. I chose a 20mm strip, awkward at the best of times with a rail saw. I lined up the measured pencil mark and put a screw in one of the holes in each bracket. I've put multiple holes in the hinge flap in case they get chewed up with the screws or in case you need to adjust the hinge. It is vital to the concept that the two pieces of wood have straight edges and are together. You could look every time, but tapping them together is quicker and the sharp melodic tap indicates no sawdust is trapped. Because the cut is under the rail, that area should remain clear during multiple cuts. Make the cut. For brevity, I did not check that it was parallel here, but as all the rest will be the same, you must be satisfied with your first piece. You can make minor adjustments by marking the hinge board and making small adjustments and using a different hole in which to drive the screw. I designed the tool for plywood, and the workpiece and the scrap hinge board should be the same thickness. You may not want to screw the hinge into a thin board and then into your bench top, in which case use 18mm for the hinge board and a piece of sacrificial 6mm board under a 12mm workpiece, or a 12mm sacrificial board under a 6mm workpiece, and so on. I found I didn't need to clamp down the hinge board, as the sacrificial cardboard on my bench is pretty chopped up and provides good friction. You may like to clamp it for extra security. As you will see, multiple cuts are quick and easy, and applying a straight edge across them, you will see they're all the same. Although designed for plywood, it will handle thicker timber, and here I am repurposing some thicker 45mm stock. I used my aluminium straight edge, which is just a 2.5 metre piece of 50 by 25 box section, to set up the hinge board by taking one of the reclaimed pieces and an offcut to make a fence longer than the workpieces. This is because the saw will not clear the hinges when cutting stock above 20mm or so, but if placed beyond the ends of the workpiece, that issue becomes irrelevant. I screwed it down to my soon-to-be retired bench for rigidity. The first task is to cut a straight edge, and here is the cut. I've already made many of these pieces, so the spacing is already done in the same way as with the plywood, but this time I'm using my straight edge to allow the straightening cut without disturbing the jig. Here I am lifting the saw rail and inserting the straight edge and putting the workpiece back with the straight edge against the aluminium. The 95mm final cut is made. The timber is not completely dry, and I don't have the dedicated panther rip blade, just a general purpose one, and so the cuts do take a little patience. And here's me just checking the dimensions prior to reuse. It was quick and easy to produce this selection of pieces of 95mm timber ready for cutting to size for our shed wall panels. Overall, I've been pleased with this new tool, and it may be that it could find a space in your workshop or toolbox. Once again, thank you to my son for all the behind the scenes work, and I'm already planning the next video. If this one has interested you, please consider subscribing and pinging the notification bell. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Goodbye.